I want to thank you all for being on the show. I want to know this is Dana, this is Kelly, and that's Scott. And if you can't tell, these two beautiful young women are twins. I did get it right?
Yeah.
See, I'm fortunate. I've known them for a while. Okay, so girls, how old are you now? And how old were you when you were diagnosed with epilepsy? And kind of how did that come about?
Kelly and I right now are 21 years old, and I was actually diagnosed with epilepsy at 14. I had my first grand mal seizure, and right away went to the hospital because I fell on the floor, was unconscious, and right away they put me on medication and said that I was diagnosed with epilepsy. And I was diagnosed actually exactly 11 months after her, right before our 15th birthday. So we were both 14 when we were diagnosed with it.
So both of you then fit into that statistic that I read earlier, which is that kids are diagnosed usually by the time they're 15 years old. That being said, were you really active in high school? Were you guys in good physical health?
Well, Kelly, at this time at 14, Kelly and I have been in dance for about 9 years. So we were really active. We did some surfing lessons, and we're really active in our school and social life and everything. And our health, as far as we're concerned, it was very healthy. So. Yeah, and we also actually both did cheer in high school for 2 years. So that was an awesome experience that we were able to do stunts, and we did gymnastics while we were in cheer, and it was just awesome that we were able to have epilepsy and then also be able to be active, and I loved it. I'm so happy that we were able to do that when most people think that we aren't able to.
Yeah, I think we just really wanted to have no limitations on the girls, as much freedom to do everything they wanted as possible. And it was risky. I mean, surf lessons are scary. You know, if they have a seizure while they're in the water, they're going right to the bottom. So we had to, you know, hire a lifeguard to watch them while they were taking surf lessons, and so there was a lot of considerations. But we just really tried to make it as. We went skiing, a lot of hiking, a lot of camping,
rock climbing too, right?
Rock climbing, yeah, we did a lot of stuff. Try not to cheat ourselves at all.
Yeah, not let epilepsy get into the way.
In Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
Well, that's really good to know, because I think a lot of times people really believe that illness or conditions occur because people aren't in good health or aren't very active. And then in addition to that, you know, oftentimes when people have to face a crisis, you know, they don't want to have to stop doing the things that give them joy in their lives. So that being said, with as active as you are, what types of seizures do you have, and how often do you have them?
The types of seizures that I have are 3 types of seizures. The first one is grand mal seizures, and those are the ones where you literally fall to the ground and you're unconscious and you convulse, and some of the side effects are where your face turns purple, and usually your tongue goes to the back of your throat, as well as your eyes goes to the back of your head, and afterwards most times you can urinate uncontrollably. The second type of seizures that I have are the petit mals, and those are kind of an absence where you're kind of just staring in a blank and you can miss a whole sentence just by a few seconds. The third one are the myoclonic seizures, and those are where you are conscious and you're shaking, and sometimes I'll be in bed just staring up at the ceiling, I'll be shaking uncontrollably, but I'm still conscious and I can still feel it. The grand mal seizures I can have anywhere up from a couple times a year, depending on how well my medication is working. The myoclonic seizures can happen every day to once a month, and the petit mal seizures can happen about every day.
So the one that happens that you kind of just miss portions of stuff, do you just sort of snap back into?
hmm Yes, a lot of times if I'm talking to people, I'll kind of snap out of it and realize I didn't know what they were talking about, and have to come back and just say, "Wait, what did you say?" And some people are kind of like, "Well, weren't you paying attention?" And so that's kind of embarrassing on my part, but I also have the three seizures that she was talking about, the grand mal, the myoclonic, and the petit mal. For me, I have only had three grand mals in my entire life, and actually I was asleep the whole entire time. Some people can actually have grand mals while they're sleeping and wake up to a black eye, or they notice that they wet the bed, or that's one way. For her, she's had a few seizures where she actually just fell down to the ground and she banged her head, or one time she actually had one in her dorm where she hit her tooth and knocked it out. And but she's better. She has pretty teeth. And the myoclonic seizures, that's where I have the most, and that's where I struggle mostly with. And when I first noticed that I was having seizures, I would wake up in the morning, have a bowl of cereal, and that's where they mostly happen for me. And I would all of a sudden just throw my cereal across the floor. I dropped a few milk bottles in the past, and a few bowls of cereal. But that's one to where you're conscious, but you kind of just twitch, or it's almost like you know how with people with Parkinson's disease where they have the tremors, except for your whole body kind of can just twitch with your hand or whatever. Petite malls, I've only had a few, and like what Dana was saying, it is where you kind of blink out and people are just like, hello, and it's just almost like where you're in the middle of a conversation that can happen sometimes, and that's about it.
So what's the challenge of that? Well, just that in itself, is it that you're just sort of like when people are asking you a question and that happens, you know, what's the hardest part of that when you're coming back out of it for you in the conversation?
Well, the hardest part is that I don't even remember. I mean, I've had times where I'm talking and then I'll kind of zone out, and I come back, and like what Dina was saying, people are like, well, weren't you paying attention? And for my husband, actually, he knows right away, and he sets me down on the bed, or our family knows. But if you're talking to a stranger, then they might say, were you paying attention? So, but that's about it with the petite malls.
So, Dad, what was your experience of having such young daughters, you know, starting to go through this experience?
Yeah, so for me as a parent, I got the call from Mom. She's at the hospital in the emergency room with Dana, and Dana had a seizure. By the time I arrived there, she was not convulsing anymore, but she was in some state of stomach consciousness, and the emergency room doctors were concerned and running in and out. And the number one fear on everybody's mind is that there's a brain tumor, and we were able that night to get a CAT scan of Dana's brain and find out that there was no tumor. So when we left the emergency room, when we left the hospital, we left knowing that she didn't have a brain tumor, and we had an appointment with a neurologist at the Children's Hospital for that next week. We got Dana an EEG, which looks at the electrical activity within the brain, and that EEG told us that Dana has abnormal electrical activity, and that means epilepsy. The good news is we found out from the neurologist that the diagnosis is juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, and it's treatable with medication. So going forward from there, I think somewhere along the line at the hospital, or maybe the neurologist's office, I learned about the Epilepsy Foundation, Epilepsy Foundation offers parenting seminars and fundraisers and support groups. I met a lot of people that had epilepsy and were dealing with it in their lives. A lot of parents who had children with epilepsy. Um, and that's pretty much where I'm at today, still participating in Epilepsy Foundation functions.
So by the time that Kelly was diagnosed then, since that was 11 months
Mhm.
later, other than the tragedy of now having your second daughter have that, did you feel better equipped with a little bit more information at that point?
I think everybody did. I think, Kelly's diagnosis was much more easier because Tanya kind of had paved the way, and Kelly's diagnosis was exactly the same. So it 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 did make it easier, but it was just one more thing. I couldn't believe all this was happening. I go back always and say, hey, at least it wasn't some terminal cancer or leukemia or something that we had to fight, and try and be positive about it. But it is a chronic problem with my daughters. So.
So have you noticed, are there any foods or thoughts or feelings or anything that seem to trigger the seizures to happen?
Yes, diet has a huge part on epilepsy. You have to be healthy in such a way where we can't have a lot of sugar, we can't have a lot of caffeine or alcohol in our system, because that can spike a seizure and we're more susceptible to having one. As far as physical sense, if someone flashes a strobe light in us, or if we go out to a club and there's tons of lights or big loud music, the vibration can set off a seizure. And also stress can trigger a seizure too, especially when you're overwhelmed with school, work, so you kind of have to just have that balance in there of just really focusing on, okay, I need to slow down my workload, I need to slow down my schooling, and because having a seizure and stress is just, that won't work. And sleeping is a big issue too. We need to have the right amount of sleep. If you're doing 3 hours of sleep every night, then you're more than likely having a seizure. And that's where our threshold is that we have to balance out where we can actually have a normal life without the stress and with having enough sleep in our lives.
Wow, and stress is pretty normal no matter what. Like, you were recently married, so, but the stress, joyful stress, did that cause any problems for you at that time, or?
Not really. I mean, it was stressful when I did get married. I mean, that was really stressful, but I think just any stress in general can be overwhelming and it can trigger a seizure. But as far as happiness, I think that's what you live for, and that's what makes everything better.
So how do they treat epilepsy?
Well, generalizing epilepsy, period, is there's many different treatments, from medication to surgeries to implants, but what we're on is actually medication, and that medication can be increased over time, we've been on several different medications. We've been increased, we've been decreased on all kinds of medications, and that's just what happens throughout years when we grow and when we become more immune to the medication. Yeah, a lot of the medications, there tends to be also, as you gradually get older, sometimes you can even create a dependency on the medication, and adjusting it is one of the challenges that we have to face. And like what she was saying about how you have to increase it or even decrease it. If you haven't had a seizure for 2 years, they could decrease the medication, and you can start a whole new path of whatever is about to come with that. So.
Well, it would seem to me, with all the things you have going on and having to always have in the back of your mind with the not knowing what could happen, that you'd think you'd be kind of depressed. But you don't strike me as sad girls. I mean, you smile all the time and seem happy and enjoying life. What do you credit that to, that you're so hopeful?
Well, majority of the time, I think of God in my life, and I think of the faith that I hold towards Him, and that He does protect me, first and foremost. Also, I don't I don't let epilepsy bring me down to live and to get somewhere. I mean, I'm in school and I want to do better in my life. I want to continue that. Epilepsy is just, on the side street of my life going down, and I try not to let epilepsy win over my life, and just stay positive. I eat good foods, I get good rest, I make sure to exercise and keep myself from overpowering anything that will trigger a seizure. Yeah, and another great thing is that we have such great family support between us. I mean, our dad and our whole family just is constantly there for us. And like she said, you have to stay positive, because if you let anything in your life drag you down, then you let that fear, what we were talking about earlier in our challenges, you let that win in our lives. And we try to just take that out of our minds. And I mean, I still dance. I love belly dancing. I just started getting into it.
You belly dance?
Yeah.
I do too.
You do?
Yes, not like professionally or anything, but I took a bunch of classes. I love belly dancing.
It.
Oh, I know
love
how fun
it.
is that? I love the things that jingle. Oh, fun. Good for you. Good
I
for
do.
you.
I continue life. In school, Dana's going to graduate this spring with her degree. I'm going to graduate next spring with my degree in communications. So we just constantly just don't let it drag us down. Just be grateful for that we can actually go to school, have a job. I mean, yeah, maybe we might not be able to have a job right now, but in the future, I know we'll be able to work and support a family, and just constantly just am grateful for what we have in our lives.
Well, good for you, and thank you so much for being willing to share your
Thank
courage
you.
with
Thank
our.
you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, so now I'd like to just share a song that I wrote for the girls in my life that have overcome, and Dana and Kelly and Christine.
Rest in yourself, take time to rest in yourself, believe and rest in yourself, you will survive. Rest in yourself, believe and rest in yourself, take time to rest in yourself, you will survive. She believes that life is in the living. Soon enough we will arrive. Healthy, happy, loving, giving. She laughs till she cries. She's learned to rest in herself. She takes time to